and welcome to Betwixt the Books. That's right, we're doing a video together, and it's like not a live video, it's like a pre-recorded video. Interesting. Today, Gretchen and I wanted to talk about some of the books that we wish we had read this past year, so in 2020 this year, because this is either going up just after we've moved over into 2021, or like just before we move over into 2021, either Wednesday or Friday, I'm not positive. So either way, welcome to 2021. Hopefully it's better than 2020. Fingers crossed. No high expectations though. I figured I'd throw it out there though. Good vibes, sending out good vibes into the universe. But we're going to talk about some books that we wish we had read last year, either they're new releases or ones that have been on our backlist TBR that we keep meaning to read and then don't. Hopefully you get some books that you enjoy, and if not, let us know that we should read them so we can talk about them, so that then you know whether you should read them and talk about them, because that's how this works, right? Yes.
Hey guys, so we know that 2020 did not go as planned, and if you've been watching my videos, then you know that 2020 really messed up my reading. It messed up my reading because I went from reading all YA, like all the time basically, to no YA almost none of the time. I've been reading a lot of romance novels and nonfiction, so my list is almost entirely, no, it is entirely YA, and that's why, because there were a bunch of good books that I meant to get to that were YA, so I didn't. Oh well. The first of those that I want to talk about is Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. I actually took this out from the library and had it for 6 weeks and never touched it. I'm sorry, Tracy, that I failed you, but Legendborn is a African-American author doing a take on King Arthur, and basically that's all I need to know. I've also heard incredible things about it. I love King Arthur retellings, and the cover is amazing. It's one of those things where I ripped it right off the shelf when I saw the cover, and it just looks so good, and it mocked me for 6 weeks when it sat there and I didn't read it. So in 2021, I will fix my error and I will read Legendborn by Tracy Deonn.
For my first book that I wish that I read this year that I didn't, I have Plain Bad Heroines by Emily M. Danforth. This just came out. It's very recent, so I don't have to feel too guilty about it because I haven't, like, squandered a bunch of time not reading it. But it is still one of those books that I, like, bought immediately, and then it proceeds to sit on my shelf, and I don't want it to sit there forever and ever and ever. If you don't know about this one, it is a horror book, so for those of you that like horror, this is going to be a good one. If you are also one of those dark academia fans, this might be a good one. And there is also sapphic romance in here, so if you like queer literature, this is also going to be a good one. As far as I understand the story, there was a mysterious death of 3 girls at this school, and we're coming back to it several years later where people are trying to make a movie about it. And there's maybe haunting stuff or like curse stuff going on at the school of like the tragedy of what happened with these girls. So yeah, queer lit, horror, dark academia.
All right, so book number 2. You may recognize it because it's not the first time that I've talked about it. I talked about this book in my Trapped in My E-Reader TBR, and I still haven't read it. So this is my second attempt to shame myself into actually doing the thing. So this book is Stardaughter by Shivta Thakur, and this is a book about a girl whose mother was a star. A little while ago she returned to her constellation, but her daughter has star powers and she's beginning to lose control of them. I love star lore, learning about constellations. My family has a really smashing telescope because we like to just like stare at stars. My brother wants to work for NASA. It's a huge thing. And this cover, the story, it just sounds so interesting, and I can't say that I've really ever heard of another one like it. And again, I'm bought by a cover, I'm bought by an idea, and yet I also took this one out of the library around the same time that I took out Legendborn, and I still haven't read it. But I don't need to take it out from the library again because I have the ebook and forgot. So I literally have no excuse on this one.
For my second book, also a book that came out this year, although this one came out earlier in the spring, that is Lakewood by Megan Giddings. This one is also a horror book, so there's a theme there between those two. I promise I won't make this entire list horror, but this one is more of a body horror / cultural horror. It, as far as I understand, is about a young woman who moves home after the death of her parents, and she takes on a lot of debt that they had accumulated, and in order to pay off that debt, she signs up to be part of some sort of program with medical science where she's getting treatments. It's supposed to be a discourse around how like medicine and science treats black bodies in particular, as well as just a discussion on like socioeconomic stuff, like what people will do in order to get out of debt, things like that. So more of a realistic horror, not a ghost story, body horror type stuff. But I've heard this one's good and I wanted to read it and I didn't, so
So moving on to books that I actually own in hard copy, my third book is Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare. I am a huge Cassandra Clare fan. I own most, if not all, of her books, and this is the first book in a new series called The Last Hours, which is set in the time period kind of sort of directly after her Infernal Devices series. The children of characters in that series factor into this one, although the main character is a girl named Cordelia Carstairs, who I believe is related, but not directly so, to one of those characters. At this point, Cassandra Clare's Shadowhunter world is so long and complicated, I could probably spend an hour trying to draw you a family tree. I'm not gonna bother. But basically, this is the next series that she's working on. I've read everything else. The next book in this series is coming out early 2021, and I need to read it, but I kept picking it up and going, oh yeah, there's this. And then there's also this little bit on the inside jacket flap. Ready? These demons walk in daylight, strike down the unwary with incurable poison, and seem impossible to kill. There's demons in London. Big shock and awe for Shadowhunters fans. And then it goes, London is immediately quarantined. And I was like, you know what I don't need? A book about a city in quarantine. Thanks, Cassandra, but not right now. But I need to catch up because these things are thick, and I've committed too much time to the Shadowhunter world to stop now, so we'll see.
Next book on my list is probably the one that people will have heard nothing about, and that's because it is such a specific me book, like my interests, that I don't even know if anybody else will have heard of this book. But this is Waist Tide by Chen Chu Fan. It is Chinese science fiction, so folks who were fans of the Three Body Problem, and they know that I read that and really enjoyed it. This is another Chinese science fiction. This one is not aliens. This one's more realistic, slightly into the future, farther than we are. It takes place on an island off of the shore of China where folks are, in theory, recycling electronics, so sending old cell phones, laptops, TVs, that sort of thing. But they are not getting recycled, they are just sitting there in a giant dump, which, if you don't know, is something that is happening in real life. A lot of the recyclables that we say are being recycled are actually just getting shipped over to Asia, and basically large parts of different Asian countries are just becoming giant landfills for the things that we think we're recycling. So tied with reality, keep that in mind. And it's about people who are trying to stop that. So there's an ecology thing about this science fiction story, as well as just perhaps a different take on consumerism, which is something that I care about. It is translated by Ken Liu, who also translated the first and third books in the Three Body Problem trilogy, and he's written books of his own as well, so if you like Ken Liu or liked the Three Body Problem, this might be another one to look into. Or if you're a person like me who is trying to be more conscious of the amount of trash that you put out into the world, interesting one for sure.
So this next book series is not unique at all. Unlike Michaela, this is as mainstream as you can mainstream. But book number 4 with some corollaries is going to be The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. And you're going to be like, Gretchen, The Cruel Prince came out like years ago at this point. How is this on a list of books you meant to read in 2020? Well, Holly Black is a local author for where I am in Massachusetts. This copy is autographed, so I bought it. I was like, I love Holly Black. You know how many years it's been since I've read a Holly Black book? I was like, it doesn't matter. I love her. It's gonna be great. Everybody's talking about this book. I'll read it and review it and it'll be great. I never did that. But then The Wicked King came out and I was like, oh, I love Holly Black. I'll read this series eventually. So then I had the 2 books in the series. The reason this makes a list of books I meant to read in 2020 is because I was in a Barnes & Noble earlier this year and I bought The Queen of Nothing, which is book 3 in this trilogy. So I now own the entire trilogy unread. So I don't buy that many books anymore now that I am a librarian and not a bookseller. So I have to put my money where my mouth is and actually read this series now that it's finished, because this is just sad.
Are we airing our buying books in a series that we haven't even read the first one, but we're gonna just buy all the books because we know we're gonna like it, but we're just gonna buy them all stuff? Because my next book is Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Moore. And again, this is quite popular. I think there's a lot of folks who will have heard of this or at least have seen the cover because beautiful. I picked this up in 2019. Obviously, I have the hardback edition with the black sprayed edges. It's a beautiful book and I wanted to have it. And I didn't even need to know that it was a queer book about lesbians in space who are also necromancers, because that's cool. That's just cool. It's a sci-fi fantasy mix. I'm very particular on my science fiction, and I tend to lean more towards fantasy when reading that stuff than I do science fiction, unless it's like quite grounded in realism, like Lakewood was. Again, I don't usually do space stuff, but I picked this one up because I loved it, and you know, we're just gonna buy the whole series because they're pretty, and I should have read this. Also, Taylor's partner read it and loved it and said that I should read it because I would also love it, so I already have it. I should read it and love it. I should have read it already.
One of the reasons that I wanted to do this video when I suggested it to Michaela was because I was like, I have to be shamed into reading some books. It's 2020 has been killer for a lot of people's mental health, and sometimes being told that you have to do a thing is the exact opposite of the thing that you should be told to do the thing. And that includes the book that I am supposed to be reading for the next joint Betwixt the Books review, which is Jeff Vandermeer's A Peculiar Peril. Now, Jeff Vandermeer, if that name sounds familiar, he's the guy who did Annihilation, which is a book that we did read and review, proud of us, and we loved it. It was incredible. This is Jeff Vandermeer's first attempt at YA, and it's also really thick, which is odd because Annihilation was so good because of its brevity to a certain extent. And this book is a very odd, surrealist gentleman inherits a old dead relative's overstuffed mansion, and instead of just finding like knickknacks and stuff, he finds like clues about an alternative universe on Earth, and there's a deadly evil, all that jazz. When I picked this book up and I was like, oh, my copy of the book came in, and I opened it to a random page, and it ended up being a paragraph where it was detailing somebody's butt cheek. And I was like, I'm real confused. So Michaela did warn me, it's her pick, she did warn me that this one would be a little bit odd. But based on that, I do actually want to review it for the channel because I think it would be pretty hilarious. But because I have been told to do the thing, I'm having issues finishing the thing or even starting the thing. So this is my commitment to saying, coming soon to Betwixt the Books, I'm gonna get it done, I swear, in 2021.
my last pick isn't one that Gretchen has to read. It's just me by myself, but it's one that I mentioned very early on in the year as wanting to read. It has been on my shelf for a couple years now, and that is The Great Believers by Rebecca Mackay. We had the joy and the privilege to meet Rebecca Mackay before she even wrote this book and got all of the great critical reviews and the National Book Award finalist stuff because she came to our college when she had just written her first or second novel. I don't remember, one of her previous ones, and we got to hear her read her first one. She came to the Literary Voices, New Voices Literary Festival. Words. My brain just went, we'll just scrunch that together. She came to that the first year that happened, so we got to meet her, and this came out and it was greatly received, and it's about men in 1980s San Francisco in the middle of the HIV epidemic. You can maybe guess similar reasons as to why Gretchen didn't read Chain of Gold as to why I didn't end up reading this, especially because I was supposed to be reading it in March, where it's about disease and how our country in particular was not very good at managing diseases. It's also apparently quite sad, which I didn't need the extra sadness in my life, but it's one that I want to read. It's about, obviously, queer history, which is something that I care about, and there's elements of that touch my personal life quite closely as well. So, Great Believers by Rebecca Mackay, one that I meant to read this year, didn't get to it for obvious reasons.
Guys, the truth is that this video could have been a lot longer. When we started filming it, I was like, 5, 10, 15, a bookshelf? It could have been all of those things, but we stuck to 5 that we wanted to talk about, the ones that stuck out the most to us. But of course there were more. Feel free down in the comments to tell us what books, what multiple books, what many books you also didn't get around to in 2020. Or, if 2020 encouraged you to read something that you wouldn't have otherwise read, because that's also something that at least I have found 2020 has done to me. Why am I reading all this romance? Only COVID knows. So please comment down there, let us know, chat with us, and it's been so great to talk to you guys and hear from Michaela, and hopefully coming soon a review of Jeff Vandermeer's YA book, because I put it out there in the world now, and you will hold me accountable. I cannot wait for 2021. Whatever happens, it will probably be better than 2020. So here's to hope and optimism and much more reading. Thanks, guys. Bye.